Russian President Vladimir Putin is continuing to meet with leaders and delegations at the Russia-Africa summit in St. Petersburg today. It's in its second day of talks. Putin told delegates from Africa that he was interested in developing military cooperation with countries across the continent. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces are claiming success on the front lines after saying they took back a village on the southeast in the southeast area of Ukraine from Russian forces. Now, Ukraine continues to press its counteroffensive to reclaim more lost territory. Our Ramy Inocencio has the details. Hey, Ramy, good morning.
Hi, yes, good morning, Anne-Marie. And the liberation of that small settlement of Staromaiorkse really is something that contributes to a morale boost, but it also gives a strategic boost to Ukraine's military, giving it the high ground to push a bit further south. And really, they needed this win to show allies like the United States that they can push back against Russia's military with the weapons that they're getting.
Across Ukraine's southern front line, soldiers are fighting a slow slog to reclaim territory taken by Russia. Foot by foot through forests and fields, rather than mile by mile, as hoped by so many. People sitting at home who say the counteroffensive should move faster should try to do it themselves, says Ukraine's chief of public relations for its territorial defense forces. Countless Russian mines are the invisible enemies. These destroyed American Bradley armored fighting vehicles and British utility trucks proof. And while Ukraine's military confirms its forces are trying to push south from Zaporizhia region, likely toward the Russian-occupied city of Melitopol, then to the Sea of Azov about 100 miles away to cut off Russia's access to Crimea, he pushed back against U.S. reports saying the main thrust of a counteroffensive has in fact begun. Offensive actions like silence above all. Reporting information about our active phase starting is not helpful. Russian forces bombarded southern Ukraine in an apparent response, piling on from Moscow's attacks on Ukraine's ports since last week, destroying grain warehouses in Odessa and the city's UNESCO-protected Transfiguration Cathedral. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the ruins Thursday and thanked soldiers for liberating a small settlement on the front line. In their video from Staromaiorkse, they chant, "Glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes." We thank the U.S. for its help, but we need more weapons to beat this cruel, cunning enemy. It's about human lives.
And that colonel we spoke to said he feels joy after liberating that village, but also sadness for every single soldier that died taking it back. And he also tempered expectations about more advances. No one should expect shock and awe, more really a slow crawl, and for every inch of land.
So, Ramy, I know it's very difficult to get sort of accurate, confirmed information from the front lines, and it's a long front line, so there are successes and there are losses.
Yeah.
What more can you tell us about sort of the movements, what's taking place in terms of the fighting there?
Sure, yeah. Well, according to a U.S. official speaking to CBS News, Ukraine's military has, in fact, committed the lead elements of a new reserve unit. This is the 10th unit, and is now making a push further south into Zaporizhia Oblast, Zaporizhia region. Now, remember this town, we might hear it more, Robotine. This town eventually leads to another town you'll hear more of, Tokmak, then Melitopol, then the Sea of Azov. Basically, this is a 100-mile or so stretch down towards the sea. The strategy here, the implied strategy, is that this line would cut off Russian forces from the so-called land bridge connecting Russia to Crimea. Crimea, we remember, of course, was annexed by Russia back in 2014. And of course, we've heard Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky say over and over he wants to take Crimea back. And besides that major drive, we're also hearing Ukrainian forces are fighting on at least 3 other fronts, but we understand, as we've implied in our reports, that those gains are minor.
So let's talk a little bit about this Russia Africa summit that's taking place. You know, there were fewer representatives from African nations compared to the last time Russia held this. But one of the things that they presented was a proposed peace plan that Vladimir Putin said he would be looking over. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, well, turns out this peace plan, it's a 10-point initiative, and it's really not new. What they're talking about this week is a resurrection or a return of the plan that they actually gave to Putin last month, and he had already reacted to it coolly then. He's reacting coolly to it now. But chief above all is that the war, they say, must end through diplomatic means as soon as possible. Other points call for the respect of sovereignty of states. This is territorial integrity, security guarantees, and the return of prisoners of war. Also ensuring the export of grain from Ukraine. And this comes in particular focus, right? Because Russia, we know, pulled out of the Black Sea Grain Initiative last week, July 17. We're now 11 days in. The new push this week is for Moscow to return to it. Many African countries, we know, rely on grain from Ukraine, and through that deal, Moscow, though, promised free grain yesterday to several African countries, but not all at the summit, interestingly, just the ones that they're a bit more friendly with.
Yes, exactly. The ones that have already showed some sort of allegiance to Russia. Ramy, thank you very much.
Yeah.